I knew something was wrong the moment the city's colossal, deeply entrenched heartbeat skipped, not a power surge, but a catastrophic, impossible pause in the electric symphony of 10 million lives, and a terrifying, oppressive hush fell over the steel canyons of Manhattan like a weighted blanket pulled too tight, instantly smothering the usual layered roar of traffic, construction, and distant sirens, replacing the familiar urban din with a heavy, vacuum-like resonance that pressed painfully on my inner ears. Every frantic, pulsating neon sign across the skyline, from the deepest reds of cheap diners to the cool, aggressive blues of corporate logos, faded instantly to a uniform, sickly, expectant gray, as if the colors themselves had become bashful or suddenly shy of the grand, impending spectacle and the accustomed, earthy smell of the coming summer rain, usually a comforting scent of asphalt and cooling dust, turned sharp, metallic, and aggressively ozone-tinged against the delicate, twitching hairs of my whiskers. Then, with a soundless, terrifying spectacle, a single, ancient, almost primordial word, a command that felt less like language and more like an elemental scar, a word I couldn't read but whose meaning was absolutely clear, burned across the churning clouds in letters made of thick, pulsating thunder and agonizingly slow-motion lightning, the sheer energy carving the sky to read, "Now." And in that breathless, absolute new silence, which was the most frightening thing of all, I planted my tiny, battle-worn paws on the rusted, vibrating framework of a huge, decades-old billboard high above the utterly stilled streets, and felt the deep, tightly coiled electricity inside my core answer the terrifying call, a purely visceral, instantaneous response as if the angry, summoned sky had just called my secret name, acknowledging my existence as part of its chaotic design, and then, with the reassuring, almost delicate sound of soft, high tensile webbing anchoring against rough concrete, a sound that was the first true evidence of life in the dead city, Spider-Man landed beside me, his movements a perfect, economical sweep of motion, with that trademark, confident smile I could hear in the warm, steady rumble of his voice even through the impenetrable mesh of his mask. "Hey, little lightning, looks like dip party's for you," and I chirped back, a low, rapid burst of static and excitement to let him know my specialized tail was already tingling with a ferocious, undeniable yes, the electricity eager to move. We hunkered down together, partners in the sudden, silent apocalypse, and watched the unnatural, geometrically perfect storm spiral down like a glowing, immense drill aimed with precise malice toward one specific building that hummed without sound, Metropolitan Power Exchange, a monolithic structure whose complicated, metallic scent I'd learned well on other nights when we had zipped past on routine patrols. The mixed scent of warm, stressed metal, heavy transformer oil, and far-off, ionized ozone concentrated into a volatile, terrifying perfume, and we swung together into the vortex, me leveraging my agility by leaping with exhilarating speed from his stable shoulder to a swinging power cable, to a sharp antenna spike, to a precarious metal crossbeam, to anything that would hold a tiny, electric hero on the move, maintaining my altitude in the turbulent air, while far below the city held its collective breath in a tableau of frozen activity. Cars stopped abruptly like forgotten toys mid-game, the brake lights still glowing red, street vendors lifted lids from cooling grills, abandoning their wares, and a small, extraordinarily brave girl in bright pink rain boots squeezed her father's hand with desperate hope and pointed at the sky, because even in the deepest, most primal fear there is always a flicker of awe and wonder. We landed silently on the exchange roof where the air was impossibly thick with a palpable, oppressive quality of not quite light, a pre-dawn gloom infused with immense voltage, and there, bathed in the sickly glow, stood a man encased in a complex harness of braided, high-capacity cables and polished metal plates that had far, far too much fragile ego in their blinding, mirrored shine. His eyes were unnervingly bright and focused like intensely hot welding arcs, and his voice buzzed and crackled with distorted power when he spoke, resonating deep in my chest. At last, the city is quiet enough to hear itself, and I felt the hairs on my back rise and bristle with intuitive alarm, because whatever he meant by quiet, it certainly wasn't the good, peaceful, restorative calm kind that lets you rest or recharge. It was the stretched, unnatural, terrifyingly taut kind that makes small, stressed things snap. And Spidey answered him with that perfect, weary, can you not tone I always liked so much, cutting through the drama. "Funny way to send a whisper, pal. Usually we just use a note." And then the man smiled, a thin, cold, entirely humorless expression, and said, "Call me conductor." And I decided right then, in that instant of buzzing unease, that I didn't like the way he made the name sound, less like a musician's baton and more like an executioner's leash, a symbol of control. His hands rose with slow, deliberate theatricality, and lightning fanned outward from his metal harness like a sudden flurry of silver, hungry snakes, striking with terrifying speed. Spider-Bro instantly leapt clear, a blurring red and blue streak, and I flew with him, the searing bolt skimming my dense yellow fur with kisses so hot they popped tiny, harmless amethyst-colored sparks off my cheeks, and I immediately fired back a retaliatory thundershock that was perfectly focused to disrupt, splitting one of his incoming currents cleanly in half, causing it to dissipate into steam. And there was pure, concentrated joy in that moment because turning destructive danger into a manageable path, reshaping a volatile threat into a simple, solvable puzzle, is the highest kind of play, and I live, more than anything, to play. Spider-Man shouted over the deafening hiss of the supercharged rain. "We can't outzap him, we need a reroute," and I whistled a small, high-pitched answer so he'd know instantly that I understood the physics and the strategy. Electricity is fundamentally just a complex story looking for an ending, and we, as partners, could write a better, more harmonious one. He instantly fired thick, incredibly strong web lines to 6 massive antenna towers, secured another 2 to a pair of rusted construction cranes, snared an old, wobbly lightning rod that stood precariously on a distant parapet, and then, with a final, crucial move, snapped a final link to a large transformer's case, completing the massive geometry, and I saw the finished design clearly in my head. A perfect, stable circle big enough to hold all of a city's raw, volatile fear without letting it overflow or detonate. So when Conductor, in his arrogance, threw a terrifying, bus-sized lance of pure current directly at us, aimed to obliterate, I charged forward and ran straight into it, using the soft, intuitive, non-violent part of my thunder to shape and guide it, the way a gentle current guides a river around a massive, unmoving rock, splitting the colossal bolt into humming, manageable threads that chase themselves eagerly and obediently into Spidey's glowing, stabilizing web circuit. Suddenly, the whole roof was transformed, not by explosion, but by a blinding, cleansing daybreak bright light, the webs burning with a searing, ethereal moon blue, the current singing a chaotic but non-biting round and round that whirled endlessly around Conductor like a crown he couldn't possibly lift without dropping the entire city, and he screamed "no" in 10 different, simultaneous crackly electronic tones and shoved more and more desperate, catastrophic power into the newly formed loop until I could feel the very physical edges of all things creak and strain. I crouched low, centered myself, gathered the entire synthetic storm inside me, holding it in perfect balance, as we truly can resist the hear the conflict stempel permana, by the west the saltwater brock the Cullihan camprum distressed Britzamwich. Spider-Man stiffened, recognizing the truly insidious nature of the attack, then looked over the edge where people had instinctively gathered in small, brave patches to share flashlights and hushed stories, to pass cups of water, to pat nervous dogs for comfort. He breathed out slowly, like a crucial idea was arriving fully formed, and told Conductor, his voice ringing with conviction, "We don't run on fear, we run on each other." And Conductor laughed, a jagged, echoing sound like tearing foil and lightning, and ripped the roof open with a powerful thought, drafting a new, hideous storm above the river that built a grotesque, terrifying face out of lightning lines and old, profound loneliness, wearing an oh-so-serious purpose like a cracked, tragic crown, and Spidey whispered to me, his voice tight, "He's turning the skyline into a speaker for his own pain." And I instantly thought, we can make it into a choir. My tail twitched west toward the precise row of rooftops with the little communal gardens we'd admired at sunset on other, peaceful nights, barrels collecting cool rainwater, weathered copper gutters, wooden trellises smelling faintly of basil and ripe tomato vines, and Spider-Man's head tilted just so, the unmistakable sign that he completely understood the strategy, and he said, with a flash of determined humor, "Borrow you Green Thumb's Manhattan?" And off we flew, me darting ahead, tagging wet copper piping and gutter screws with polite, gentle little sparks, establishing the connection, him stapling web line to web line until the path across 5 rooftops and 2 massive water towers and one extremely offended, historically protected gargoyle hummed with a low, welcoming frequency like a porch after a warm dinner, soft and friendly and not at all the kind of current you can yank into a weapon. Conductor felt the loss of his circuit too, turning slowly in the dying storm with utter confusion, asking, his voice cracking, "What are you building?" And Spidey answered, the words carried on the friendly current, a circuit you can't use, and I stepped to the parapet and sent a clear, amplifying hello that circled the garden loop and came back multiplying, not in destructive volts, but in gathered voices, the sharp ping of a deli counter bell, a neighbor's booming laugh, a stairwell guitar practicing a gentle chord, a firefighter's reassuring, "You okay?" that landed gentle after a heavy door closed, and the storm face above us quivered violently like a sob that didn't want to be heard, and the harness around the lonely man on the roof spat final, guttering sparks and curled inward, trying desperately to hide. The city lights raced on, first within the power exchange, then in slices across blocks, then like dominoes falling up the entire island, a tidal wave of returning, ordinary illumination, and below the roof the cheer that rose sounded like not a single roar, but like pots and pans and sheer unadulterated joy, and Spider-Man walked calmly to conductor as the man sagged, defeated, and sat cross-legged under the healing rain, his eyes, suddenly human again, stripped bare, his voice utterly naked. I wanted to fix it. The waste, the noise, the way everyone shouts and no one hears the truth, and I crept close, quiet as a shadow, so he could see his tired, human face reflected perfectly in my dark, unaccusing eyes, recognizing himself as just a regular, exhausted person who had mistakenly tried to use a too sharp tool on a soft, human problem, and Spidey said the quiet, simple truth that fit the moment. If you force harmony, you kill the song, and he webbed the harness safe for transport and called for the gentle, appropriate kind of help, and the stairwell below filled with the good, professional clatter of first responders, and far below on the street, a kid lifted a poster so big it took both arms and it read, "Thank you, Pikachu," in letters made of courage and waxy crayons, and I waved back, because gratitude is a vital current too, after statements and careful equipment shutoffs and a power tech's exhausted, final order, no more rooftop concerts, okay? We sat together on the edge to watch steam lift off the streets in vast, silk curtains while the blessed, ordinary morning finally seeped into the lingering gray, and I rested my head against Spider-Man's warm wrist so he could feel directly how my own small heartbeat had finally steadied to match the city's returning, constant rhythm, and he scratched that good spot right behind my ears and said I had been a lighthouse, a beacon of guidance, and I pretended not to kick my foot with happiness, but I did, a little, just a tiny motion. We took the long way to breakfast because long ways are how you truly meet mornings. Over a freshly washed pier where joggers ran with the measured, grateful gentleness people learn only after a shared scare. Past a playground where a patient teacher counted out roll call with genuine kindness in every number. Through a quiet street where a gruff, soft-hearted bodega cat supervised the distribution of hot cocoa to kids who had been brave last night. Under a rusty fire escape where noodles steamed fragrantly in cartons that warmed my paws right through the paper bag while we sat and shared the morning, the moon still shy in a rapidly brightening sky. The diner we chose had a neon sign that blinked itself slowly alive like a yawn of relief, and the tired cook didn't even flinch at the sight of a little electric hero sitting at the counter, because New York has room for us all when we're polite and we mind our manners, and Spider-Man's custom-made omelet vanished like lightning finds ground, and I made intricate syrup art across a towering stack of blueberry pancakes until my cheeks glowed a soft, contented amber, and the TV above the counter said words like heroic and community and mystery while showing images of Times Square spontaneously clapping for paramedics and a selfless delivery guy lifting a fallen traffic cone just because it's good to lift, and I thought, this is what power looks like when you share it, not when you hold it captive. By afternoon, conductor went quietly where people who have broken things go to start fixing themselves and understanding their actions, and Spider-Man whispered, with a deep sigh, courts, consequences, choices, and I felt how the difficult path of hope can be a second chance when you choose it. By evening, the city hummed again in the familiar, comforting register that lives between hurry and home. A weary barista wrote a heart out a paper cup like she couldn't help the small gesture of affection. The F train squealed, but somehow softer and less aggressively. A kid practiced skateboard tricks and failed, and instantly laughed because failing kindly is how real courage grows. Little, independent lights glowing everywhere, and I helped them glow, just a tiny, imperceptible bit by simply walking past and letting my tail wink back whenever eyes looked particularly tired or sad. Near midnight, we went back to the radio tower where the sky had once worn a harsh, electric face and now wore only the ancient, indifferent stars, and Spider-Man said, "We did good in that quiet, deep way where you're not asking for confirmation, just letting the goodness settle into your bones like a warm weight." And I answered with a spark that felt like gratitude and pure sugar and the promise of a long nap. I know you asked for a single, long story, but for me it's never just one. Last night became a string of interconnected small stories that collectively made one big song. How Spidey didn't flinch when the lightning bit, how I found a new way to throw my thunder that wasn't about raw power, but about shape and gentleness, how Conductor truly listened then the loudness was stripped off his fear, and he could finally hear the quieter, more complex music of being truly human. How a city remembered that its very best grid is made of linked hands, doors held open, and names learned. If you want the details, the micro moments, I will give you all of them, because in the sacred act of telling, I keep them forever lit. The exact taste of rain in my tongue, like old pennies, and the sharp, clean scent of air after someone forcefully opens a window. The specific way webbing hum when it's carrying not destructive voltage, but resonant voices, vibrating at a frequency when thank you, Pranidotnaki. You game at the derek type stupidity.